Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So the 3 p.m. deadline has elapsed. All the trades, for the most part, has been finalized. We had multiple at the very last minute. Massive one, obviously, being Tomas Hertl. So now we have everything in the books. We have all the deals that were made. So I wanted to go through 5 of the biggest winners, in my opinion, as well as 5 of the biggest losers. I'm going to start this. This isn't just going to be like deadline the past 3-4 days. I'm basically going to go since the Lindholm and Monahan deals on, because Winnipeg Jets, Canucks, those were part of their deadline plans. They just got them like a month ahead of time. So I'm going to be factoring those in. 5 winners, 5 losers. Some teams I want to shout out that aren't going to fall into the winners or losers, even though you might think that they are. The Carolina Hurricanes with the Gensel deal, I think that was a massive win, but I'm just not too high on that Kuznetsov deal when looking at the fact that he has $3.9 million left this season and next season, even at half retained. Carolina has a shit ton of pending free agents, restricted and unrestricted. Kuznetsov has been pretty fucking dog shit, just straight up the past 2 years. So taking a chance on that, it could backfire. I still think they had a very good deadline, but I think the 5 teams that I ended up choosing as winners, they're still a winner, but they're not a top 5 winner in my opinion. Also, the New York Rangers, I clowned on them a lot during this deadline, but I do think Wenberg for a second and a fourth, solid deal. Roslovic got him for a fourth, a conditional fourth that can become a third, I think, if they make the Stanley Cup final. That's a pretty solid deal. Again, Drury probably should have been more aggressive, but he didn't go out and massively overpay. He got two pretty solid middle sixers for mid-round picks that you don't really give a shit. Second round is a solid pick, but I think the Rangers, underwhelming, but definitely not a failure by any stretch. So without further ado, the first winner is obviously the Vegas Golden Knights. This is their entire trade results as a whole. They got Hertl, Hanifin, Mantha for a first-round pick, another first-round pick, David Enstrom, who was their 2023 first-round pick, 2 seconds, a fourth, a fifth, and Danil Miramanov. So it is a massive haul that they gave up, but I do think this is a win considering Hanifin most likely will sign an extension, as well as Hertl being a part of their plans for the next 3 to 4 years, the bare minimum. So this isn't just a rental. This isn't like Florida Panthers back in 2022, where they gave up Tippett, 2 firsts, a third, and like a fourth for Ben Chiarot and Claude Giroux. That was a disaster. Those guys both left immediately. You're going to have Hanifin probably on an extension for the next 8 years, as well as Hertl at a reasonable $6.75 million, at least for the next 3 to 4 years. So when looking at this, Vegas went from a wild card team 4 days ago, for the most part, that I honestly thought would probably lose if they ended up playing either the Canucks, Winnipeg Jets, if they were a wild card team, or lose the Oilers in like 6 or 7 games if they got into that other divisional spot, to now truly being one of the top tier cup contenders in the entire NHL. Noah Hanifin gives them one of the best defense cores in the entire NHL. Anthony Mantha is going to be a goddamn third liner. Hertl arguably might be their third line center at this point. So they're just absolutely loaded. As long as Adin Hill can provide them some pretty good goaltending in the playoffs, I think they're probably my pick to make the Western Conference Finals, whether they beat a Winnipeg Jets, Colorado, or Dallas. Let's see how those teams play with their new additions. But Vegas completely changed their season, changed their outlook with these deals. They got to make the playoffs, though, first off. They got to lock up that playoff spot, but it was very good. The first loser, New Jersey Devils, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? I do like the fact that they retained some money on the Chris Tanev trade, considering they had all that money from Dougie Hamilton. The Curtis McDermott, that I don't really care about that. The Toffoli return, very disappointing. A second and a third round pick. I don't know how you get Tyler Toffoli. You retain half of his salary and you don't get at least a first round pick, or at least like 2 seconds. 2 seconds, I think, still would have been underwhelming, because I would rather just have a first. But to get a second and a third round pick, where Sean Monahan got a first round pick, Sean Walker got a first round pick, but they also did attach that Johansson deal with that. When looking at it, as well as the fact that they traded for Jake Allen, who was just bad this year, 892. Yes, he is playing on a bad team, but his advanced stats also aren't that good. Got him at half retained, but I don't think that solves their problems next year. They did get Kakin in for Vanacek, which I think is an upgrade in the short term, but I'm not sure they're going to bring him back. So just overall, the goaltending is not solved long term yet, as well as getting a lackluster return for Tyler Toffoli. Another winner, the Winnipeg Jets, man. Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli acquired for a 2024 first, a 2025 second, a 2024 third, and a 2027 third. That's only if the Winnipeg Jets win the goddamn Stanley Cup this year. So basically a first, a second, and a third for a legit second line center that has been tearing it up on their team this year in Sean Monahan, as well as Tyler Toffoli, a guy that had 73 points last year and is on pace for 35 goals this year when he was on the New Jersey Devils. That is fantastic asset management. Just giving up late first round picks, because the Winnipeg Jets are probably going to win the Central Division. They don't touch any of their elite prospects. Fantastic work by Kevin Cheveldayoff. I thought that they were going to have to give up a first round pick, 2 firsts, two firsts for Monahan and Toffoli ended up just being that first, second, and third. And the Winnipeg Jets, as a result, are legit top tier cup contenders now, in my opinion. Another loser, Toronto Maple Leafs. You knew I had to go with this one, although I let the Rangers off the hook. This was not a good deadline for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Ilya Lyubushkin, Joel Edmondson, Connor Dewar for a third, a fourth, and a sixth round pick. They basically got depth defensemen, maybe third pair defensemen, and a fourth line center for 2/3, a fourth, and a fifth. It's not horrible value. I didn't like the Lyubushkin or Edmondson deal, but it's okay. It's a third and fourth. They didn't give up any premium assets, but they didn't improve this team at all. They maybe got depth pieces if some people go down with injuries, a fourth line piece, maybe a third pairing defenseman. Just unacceptable for a team like Toronto. I didn't expect them to go all in considering they went pretty aggressive last year, but this is just really disappointing for a team that's safely in the playoffs, for a team that Austin Matthews is getting a pay raise next season, William Nylander is getting a massive pay raise next season, for them to kind of not punt on the season, but to not be aggressive with other teams in the Eastern Conference, especially the Florida Panthers, Carolina Hurricanes, even the Rangers making far better moves. It's pretty disappointing if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and it's not really any good value in any of these deals, and as a result, I think they're a loser. The Colorado Avalanche, they loaded up, man. Sean Walker obviously gave up a first-round pick, but they got rid of Ryan Johansson. Casey Middlestat for Bowen Byram. I really like that deal, especially in the short term. Yakov Trenin and Brandon Dumais. This was very solid work by Chris McFarland. He got forward depth as well as a legit second line center, as well as a solid second pair right-handed defenseman for not a ton of assets. When looking at it, Bowen Byram, yes, is a promising guy, but just far too inconsistent over the next 2 to 3 years. We're not sure he's going to fully pop over that. So just move on, get Middlestat, who's a consistent back-to-back, like 60-point guy. Sean Walker, first-round pick, who really cares? It's a massive upgrade in terms of their right hand, in terms of Bowen Byram just right now, and Ryan Johansson, getting him off the books for $4 million. That is a massive win for them in terms of having cap flexibility to sign Casey Middlestat, as well as the fact that they bolstered their overall depth. It was a great deadline by the Colorado Avalanche. Another loser, the Los Angeles Kings, man. They ended up doing absolutely nothing and to only add insult to injury. Apparently, a Linus Ullmark deal fell apart at the finish line. Apparently, Ullmark just didn't want to go there. So when looking at the LA Kings, they ended up making no trades at this year's deadline, which I wasn't expecting them to be major players. But right now, they are in that third Pacific spot. This core is not that young. Yes, they have Byfield and Brandt Clark coming up that are going to be the future faces of the franchise, but the time is definitely now with this core. So the fact that they did nothing while Vancouver obviously traded for Lindholm prior, Vegas goes all out, balls to the wall, Winnipeg, Colorado, Dallas all make their moves. It's just very disappointing, and I think they're just set up for another first-round exit, their third straight first-round exit. I don't see how they can massively improve next season unless they get the goaltending and going down the stretch. Dave Riddick or Cam Talbot are not going to lead them to a Stanley Cup run. So similarly to the Toronto Maple Leafs, not that they're punting on this season because they're still going to make the playoffs, but it's just very disappointing, and it kind of leaves the fans hopeless for the most part in terms of a deep playoff run. A sneaky winner that I don't see people talking about, considering I'm including the Sean Monahan deal in this, is I really like what the Montreal Canadiens did in their two big deals. Sean Monahan got a first-round pick for Sean Monahan. Again, they took a first-round pick in order to take him on, so they basically got 2 first-round picks for Sean Monahan in some pretty solid games, as well as getting Jake Allen off their books for a third-round pick that could become a second if he plays 40 games. Probably not going to happen, but just very good asset management by Kent Hughes. Most people doubted that he would get a first-round pick for Sean Monahan, and you look at it now a month later, Tarasenko didn't get a first-round pick. Toffoli didn't even get a first-round pick. So the fact that he was able to squeeze a first-round pick out of that, yes, he is a center compared to wingers, but he didn't really have the track record the prior 2 to 3 years compared to those guys. So just fantastic work by Kent Hughes. The rebuild continues to go on in the right direction. Another loser, Edmonton Oilers, man. Although they did make one decent trade, again, Adam Henrique's probably a third-line center. They have a ton of holes right now in terms of their thing. They didn't upgrade over Cody Ceci. The bottom 6 is okay, but they probably could have added some more depth to that. So when looking at the Edmonton Oilers, their one all-out win-now move is Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick. That is very disappointing for an Oilers fan, especially when you saw Thursday Wednesday night, Hannafin to Vegas. Then today, goddamn Hurdle to Vegas, the team that you might be playing in the first round. Ken Holland at like noon was like, yeah, I'm done for the day. I'm checking out. If I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan, I'm absolutely pulling hairs out. McDavid and Draisaitl, although I don't think they're leaving eventually, they're going to need massive raises in this next season or two, off season or two. So in looking at this, the fact the Oilers didn't go more all in, especially because the Canucks didn't really pull off any massive trade, you got to be more aggressive if you're the Edmonton Oilers. I think this was a very disappointing deadline for them. And as a result, if they end up not going far in the playoffs, especially if they're a first round exit, I think it's without a doubt that Ken Holland is not going to get a contract extension. His contract's up, so he won't be fired technically, but it's going to be like a mutually parting of ways because this was kind of an unacceptable deadline for Edmonton Oilers on the whole. Another winner, Florida Panthers. They didn't do anything massive considering their lack of assets. They didn't have a first round pick this year or next year, as well as I think not a lot of mid round picks. But the fact that they were able basically to bully the Ottawa Senators into giving them Vladimir Tarasenko for a third and a fourth round pick, adding a fantastic middle six piece. Guy was on pace for around like 55 points. Third and a fourth round pick. That might be the best singular value deal of the entire deadline, not offseason. So when looking at that, that was fantastic. And I also really like the Kyle Okposo trade. Kyle Okposo for a 7th round pick and an AHLer. He's not the most flashy player, but in a bottom six, their bottom six is already absolutely loaded, but a fantastic two-way guy like Kyle Okposo, I think can be really timely for the Florida Panthers. So not the most overt dominant Panthers aggressive deadline, but I think Bill Zito learned from his mistakes 2 seasons ago to not trade the entire farm system, not trade Mackie Samskovich, not give up on Anton Lundell, and instead make these minor tweaks because your team already is so fantastic. I believe they're first in the entire NHL right now. So I really like the deadline for the Florida Panthers, and as a result, they're probably the favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference right now. And then the last loser, it's tough, but I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Penguins. I just think the Jake Gensel return was kind of disappointing. Didn't get a guaranteed first-round pick from the Jake Gensel trade. When that just blows my goddamn mind. Although I think Koivunen can end up being a good player, that's not for another 3 to 4 years. I don't understand the path with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Are they trying to be competitive next year? They get a Michael Bunting. That seems to suggest that. But then they get a bunch of guys between the ages of 19 to 21 and a second-round pick this year that's not really going to materialize for another 2 to 3 years. When you consider how old their core is, they just seem directionless, in my opinion. Most of their core is locked up. It's not like they could even move them this summer. So I have no clue what Kyle Dubas is doing. Personally, I know he denied some extension talks, like they couldn't really figure out a deal, but I would have done what it takes to potentially sign Jake Gensel, because I don't think in the next 3 years, again, when those guys are still in their prime, that this package is going to resemble anything close to as good as Jake Gensel is and could be, even on a longer term, more expensive deal. So just very disappointed by the Pittsburgh Penguins. But those are my 5 winners and my losers. We got Vegas for winners. I'll just go the winners in a row. Vegas, Winnipeg, Colorado, Montreal, and then Florida. And then for the losers, the Devils, Leafs, Kings, Oilers, and Penguins. Also, I think the Flames did a pretty solid job. They obviously were the most active team this deadline. Couple underwhelming packages like Chris Tanev, Noah Hannafin, but I really like what they got for Lindholm, as well as, I'm blanking on someone. The Zadorov trade was also pretty solid. I think that's it. But very, very okay solid for the Calgary Flames. I wouldn't really qualify them as a massive winner or a massive loser. But let me know in the comments, what do you think? I don't think I'm really forgetting any teams. I like what San Jose did with the Hurdle deal, getting basically 2 first-round picks, getting out of that massive contract. Very good job. But let me know in the comments, what did you think about this deadline? Who's your biggest winners and losers? And I'll be seeing you in the next one.